Hello everyone. Today we're going to be painting this girl reaching up for the moonlight. It's a very kind of vibrant sunset picture. You could definitely switch up the colors. I wouldn't say this painting is for absolute beginners. It's a little bit more challenging, but even if you've never painted before, I would still give it a try. With painting, you just have to keep trying, and you can always come back and work on a painting once your skill has improved a little bit. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a gradient where you transition from each color to the next and you get a really kind of smooth appearance where the colors blend together to create a sunset. I'll also be showing you how to do a graphite transfer. So all you'll need is a printer, a pen, some graphite paper, or you can also paint in your girl and your moon by hand. This painting is fun, relaxing, and extremely colorful. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're gonna do is go over our materials. I've got a 9x12 gessoed canvas. The brushes I'm using today are a 1-inch flat wash brush. Any 1-inch flat will do. 1/2-inch flat, 1/4-inch flat, size 12 filbert, size 6 pointed round, size 0 pointed round, or any detail brush. And then I have a small mop brush and a large mop brush, but any will do. I've got some paper towel here. I've got a jar of water, and I usually have a little extra jar of water so that I can use that for any white painting that I'm gonna do after my water gets dirty. For my paints today, we're using acrylic paints, Liquitex Basics, and the colors I'm using are titanium white, primary yellow, cadmium yellow medium, naphthol red, magenta, brilliant purple, dark purple, ultramarine, Mars black, ivory black would work as well, and then I've got a fluorescent pink. You'll see in the description that there's a link to get a printout. And I made this, if you want to practice your drawing skills and you want to draw by hand, you absolutely could. But I made this so I can show you guys how to do a graphite transfer. So you'll just need a regular printer and just print it out at 100%, the size that it comes. And then you'll need graphite paper. So I've got a little piece of that cut out. And then I have some scissors and a pen for that process a little bit later. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. We're gonna take our our 1-inch flat, dip that in your water, dab it on the side of your glass, and then you can just dab it a little bit on your paper towel. And the reason I have all these extra piles of paint is because I did a practice of this painting and I saw that I used a ton of paint. But feel free to, I just need to have it ready because I'm teaching you guys, but feel free to just grab more paint as you go. You can start off with just one little pile and then just get more whenever you're ready. All right, the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna take this bright primary yellow, I'm gonna take my cadmium yellow medium. How this brush works is if I use the flat side, I can make a very thick line, and if I use the edge, I can make a very thin line. Even if I'm using the edge, if I press down really hard, I'll still make a larger mark. So just keep in mind how much pressure you apply with your brush. The first thing we're gonna do is add in a horizon line. So I'm gonna eyeball halfway down my canvas, and I'm gonna use the edge of my brush, and I'm just gonna do a yellow line straight across. So that's gonna be my horizon line. And the next thing I'm gonna do is use the flat side of my brush. And with this background and with the whole painting in general, we're gonna be using a little bit more paint than you might be used to or you might think, because we want it to be thick and we want it to blend in. So I've gone across the canvas and I'm doing long brush strokes. Notice I'm starting on one side of the canvas, I'm going all the way to the other end before I lift my brush. And that's giving that smooth appearance. So I'm gonna go up about 2 inches, and I'm gonna make sure there's enough paint on here that it's not just drying as I go, and that it's filling in the texture of the canvas. All right, so now that I've got that in there, I'm gonna wipe my brush off on my paper towel, clean my brush. Doesn't need to be super clean, but a little cleaned up there. The next color I'm going to use is going to be this bright red. I love this red. It is just gorgeous to me. I love it. And I'm just going about the thickness of my brush when I'm using the wider side of it. And I'm going all the way across, and now I'm going to start to go down on top of the yellow. I got to get a better angle on this here so I can see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to keep going back and forth. And you'll see those colors just start to blend together as I continually brush over it, right? It's beginning to turn orange. Now, if you wanted a more kind of cloudy looking sky, you could do short brush strokes where you're starting your brush in the middle of the canvas. But I'm doing long brush strokes today. So that's about where I want it. I'm gonna wipe my brush off on the side. Clean my brush out. Try not to drop water on my canvas, which I've been repeatedly doing lately. And next I'm going to take my magenta. So same thing. I'm going to go right across the top of the red, and I'll tell you what I love, and that is these two colors together. This magenta with this red is just, I'd say fire, as the young kids say. It's fire. And I'm just brushing over and over. Now notice if I hold my brush perpendicular to the canvas, I would just dig the paint off. But if I make sure that the handle of my brush is close to the canvas, I can lay it on a little bit more thickly. I'm gonna wipe my brush off on the side, clean my brush out again. Doesn't need to be too clean. And I'm gonna get right in there with my blue next. So we're skipping those purples for now. So I've got it filled in, and now I'm going to start to brush down into the magenta. All right, so without cleaning my brush out, there's a ton of paint on your brush, you can just wipe it off. I'm now gonna take some of my dark purple, not the light purple, my dark purple, and I'm gonna go up at the very top, and that's gonna make it even darker up there. Now, what you could do is you could continue to brush back and forth, over and over on this, and it's gonna just get more and more neutral as the colors blend together. And there are skies like that, so that's totally an option. If you wanna keep it more vibrant, then you wanna try not to brush over it too much. So I think I'm gonna leave mine right about there for now. And now I'm gonna start down here on my water. So I'm gonna wipe my brush off on the side. That keeps my water cleaner longer. Now this time I really do need to get my brush clean because I'm gonna go back in with yellow. So if I have blue in my yellow, right, I'm gonna get green. So I'm just spinning my brush in a circle. I'm pressing against the bottom of the glass. Tap it on my paper towel. And we're gonna come in here with the water. Okay, so this is kind of fun technique. It's kind of wild. We're going to use a lot of paint. We're going to kind of just go for it. So we're going to start off with yellow. Okay. And what I want you to do First, we're going to eyeball where the center of our water is going to be. So our girl is going to be slightly to the left. Her hand is going to be reaching right up into the center. So if we want to see the sun's reflection in the water, we need to make it just a little bit off center. So if you want, you can eyeball halfway, and then I want you to go over about an inch from there. Okay. And now you can even use the edge of your brush. Okay, that's gonna be my line, right? So now I'm gonna take the flat side of my brush and I'm just gonna go down, short brush strokes, and I'm adding on kind of decent amount of paint. And I'm going to do a little bit extra yellow at the top here. So I'm using the edge of my brush here. Get a little bit extra in there. All right, the next thing I'm going to do, wipe my brush off on the side. I'm going to go to the next color, which is the bright red. So I'm going to just go ahead and get a ton of paint on my brush. And actually, I'd start at the bottom and go up ideally. Just kind of run out as you get to the top. So whatever's closest to you is going to be more vibrant. Okay, and now I'm going to do the horizontal brush strokes, short brush strokes, flat side of my brush. And now I'm going to start to use the flat side of my brush, and I'm going to brush into the yellow. So I'm doing very light brush strokes now, not pressing down too hard at all. Okay, I'm liking that. I'm going to use the edge of my brush here while it has the red on it to just kind of redefine my edges on the side there. And now I'm going to use the edge of my brush to just cut a few lines through it. So I'm not adding on any more paint. I'm using the edge. And I'm kind of lightly swiping over it. All right, I'm gonna wipe my brush on the side. Next color, our magenta. Same thing, I'll start at the bottom and just lay some on there first. And then same thing, using the flat side of my brush, and I'm brushing over on top of the red. And this time we're really kind of going on top of the red in a big way. And then same thing as before. Just going to use the edge of my brush here. To cut some lines into that. Wipe my brush on the side. And next color, we're going to use the blue. So first adding it to both sides. And then starting to brush on top of the magenta. So as you're doing this, you may find that you kind of like it with just these brush strokes where you're kind of lightly smoothing it out. You really need to step back and look at it from far away or take a picture of it to really see what it looks like. But you might like this kind of smooth look, or you might like your water to be more choppy. So that's kind of up to you. I like it when the water's a little bit uneven. So maybe the blue's gonna go a little bit further in one area than another. So one thing you can do is you can then basically brush over the entire thing. I'm gonna next grab some purple though. I'm gonna make it a little bit darker on the sides here. Okay, and now I'm gonna start to use the edge of my brush to do what we talked about, where we kind of cut lines into it. And maybe some are short here in the middle, maybe some are long. And I'm gonna start to really go across the water. And you might start to pick up some of the yellow. That's fine, just roll with it. I need a little bit more blue over here. And now I'm going to show you what it looks like if I lightly kind of brush over the whole thing. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to clean it out. And I'm going to leave it damp and flat with nothing on it. And I'm very, very, very lightly going to brush over the whole thing. Okay? So very lightly. If you get a lot of the texture of your canvas showing, that's because your paint is already drying a little bit. That's okay. It's not a big deal. Use the edge of my brush here. Any little spots where I'm really seeing the canvas, like I didn't get enough paint, add a little bit more in there. And the only thing I feel like I'm missing is I just wanted a little bit oranger up there. So I'm going to take my brush with the yellow and the red on it. And I'm just going to fill this in with some orange up there. All right, so that's going to be it for kind of first layer on this. We're going to let that dry a little bit. And while we wait, we're going to come up and start doing our sky, and we're going to do our little moon. So let's go ahead and do a first round of stars first. So we're going to take our pointed brush, and you're going to need some clean water, and you're going to go straight from your water to some white paint and mix your white paint around until you get really liquidy paint. So it should be like melted ice cream. It's all over your brush. You can try this out on the side first, see how it comes out, see how you like it. Whenever you're ready, you can go straight on to your canvas. So I'm going to come on to my canvas. I'm right-handed, so I'm gonna hold my brush at the very end of the handle, and I'm gonna hold on very loosely. Then I'm gonna tap this black part right below the bristles. I'm not gonna tap on the actual brush so that I get it all over my hand. I'm gonna tap right below there. And I want my brush to just kind of bounce up and down. And for stars, we want them to be like nature. Some big, some little. It's random, but it's not really random. You don't want them all in one spot, and you don't want them all everywhere. So I'm gonna do kind of clusters. So maybe I've got a lot over here. And then I'm also gonna do a little bit on the water, which some of this will end up being covered up. But this is just kind of our first layer. With painting, if you add more and more layers, and then you can kind of see the paint showing through, that causes the viewer to have interest. Makes the painting look more interesting. All right, so at this point you can go ahead, take a little break, let this dry, take a picture, look at it, set it back, have a snack, and then we'll get started on our next step. And you can also, if you haven't printed this out, this is a great time to go print that out. And I'm gonna go ahead and take this time to cut this out closer. So I'm gonna cut right up next to it, and that's gonna make it easier for me to see exactly where I'm putting her. So I'm gonna cut it that close there. And then I'll take my graphite paper and I'll cut my graphite paper just slightly larger than my piece of paper. And my son, he wanted to use the cardboard rolls that the graphite paper comes on to make a dragon. And so he unrolled all of my graphite paper. And so now I just have a big drawer of crumbled graphite paper, but you know what? I feel like it works just the same. So it'll be fine. All right, we're gonna go ahead and let this dry. All right, so for our next step, we're gonna add in our white reflection. So I'm gonna switch to my 1/2 inch flat. Probably any flat brush will do. I'm gonna get that wet in my water, tap it on my paper towel, and I'm gonna load up my brush with white paint. So keep in mind that this brush works the same as the large flat with how you use it. It's just a smaller size. And I wanna make sure that I get quite a bit of paint right at the end of my brush. So we're gonna use the edge of our brush to draw lines. Now, whatever is further back right here by the sun is gonna be smaller and less detailed. And as it gets towards the bottom of the canvas, it's gonna get bigger and more detailed. And also the lines are gonna go just a little bit kind of zigzag. So I'll show you over here actually, so you can see what I mean. So the one on the left is gonna aim slightly down and then slightly this way. So it's gonna be just a little bit jagged rather than straight across. You could do straight across. Sorry, that has a lot of water on it. You could do straight across if you want to imagine that your ocean water is just stiller. So that's kind of up to you. So I'm gonna come right up here. I've got kind of my yellow center line, and up here at the top, I'm just gonna use it like a stamp. So I'm just gonna lightly touch my brush to make some short lines. And then I'm gonna start to use my brush to drag it across to make slightly longer lines. And it can look kind of uneven, and I'm grabbing more paint each time. I'm going to do some short, some long. Okay, so I'm now going to take the corner of my brush and I'm going to kind of glob a little bit of white in the very center, kind of going all the way down. So that's going to be our brightest highlight. So I'm going to glob a little bit of white here. And I'm using my corner, and if your corner is too big, you could also do this with, if you're more comfortable, you can use your detail brush. Yeah, that's probably a little bit easier. And you want it kind of globby. You don't want it perfect, right? Because you can imagine water's hitting it from, or light is hitting the water from very far away. And I'm going to go back to my 1/2 inch flat, and I'm just going to make it a little bit more kind of globby on some of these lines. All right, and while we have this brush, let's also just do a little bit, I'm gonna use the edge of my brush and just do a little bit of white up here in the sky. And then I'm gonna do a little, and you can use your detailed brush if you want. I'm just using the corner of my brush to do a little sun. It's got my little sun there. Now we're gonna go out into the rest of the water. So you may find that you're more comfortable using the edge of this brush to kind of trace some waves. So I'll show you what that might be like, remembering they're gonna be really small in the background. So I can use the edge of my brush, kind of go up a little bit, down a little bit. You may find that it's easier for you with your detail brush. Just make sure you mix some water in with your paint if you're using your detail brush, because it just doesn't hold that much. So I'll show you what that looks like. And the other option would be to use your larger pointed round. So I'm gonna have some, I'm gonna start kind of halfway over in the blue here. And some that kind of go all the way out to the edge. You just want it to kind of be random. That's basically the point. And if it looks too uniform, like a ruler, I'm gonna go and like mess it up a little bit. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in and kind of outline where our wave is crashing. Okay, so I am going to switch to, I'm gonna switch to my bigger pointed round brush. So same one we used for the stars. You can go straight from your water to your white paint actually. We're gonna use white first to kind of outline it. How this brush works when you're painting with it rather than just making splatter, if you press down really hard, you can make a very thick line. If you very lightly glide along the canvas, you can make a thin line. So it's similar to the square brush, but a little bit different. And this brush can really kind of get loaded up with paint. Okay, so now I want to do where my wave is crashing. So it's gonna crash almost halfway between, but just a little bit above. So you can eyeball your halfway point between your ocean here, and you're gonna go a little bit higher than that, and that's where your wave is gonna crash. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have our brush kind of go really bumpy up and down all the way across to the other side. So I'm gonna go up, down, up, down. And it doesn't matter what you paint over along the way. Just gotta keep going. I just took out 2 of my waves. That's okay. And again, you want it to be random. Maybe it goes higher in some areas, lower in other areas. And then we're gonna come down here, same thing. I'm gonna make sure that I have kind of a little bit of watery paint on my brush. So I'm gonna go down. You can eyeball halfway and go up a little bit. So it's about 1.5 inches below where our little wavy line we just did. And we're gonna do a line that's gonna cut all the way across to just above this corner. And it's not gonna be a straight line. This is gonna be kind of a wavy line as well. So for this one, we want it to kind of dive in and out. And I can even lift my brush and then come again. Maybe do a short one, lift my brush, and then come again. Lift my brush. Maybe do some wider ones. And that's the water kind of coming up onto the shore. All right. So for my next step, you could use this pointed round brush, but I almost think it might be easier to do it with our little detail brush. So sometimes be careful with this one because water can get caught up here and then you're painting and then all of a sudden a big water droplet comes and lands on it. So if you want to avoid that if you can. Okay, so I'm going to take our same kind of watery mixture here and I'm going to go along the top again. And now with some kind of watery paint, I'm gonna add some detail and some lines to this. So what we're gonna do is we're going to, over here on the left, at the bottom of each of these kind of little divots, so it peaks up and then it goes down, I'm gonna do a kind of wavy line going down towards the bottom center of the canvas. And I'm gonna use water in my paint so I don't have to keep going back to get more every single time. Now as I get here to the center, this is where my girl's gonna go. So right here, I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna have some of my lines go the other direction. So we're creating a V, it's kind of going right back down in that direction. And then take off again and doing the same direction that we did before. Now to make these just a little bit more realistic, I'm gonna add some water to my paint so that my water or my paint is very diluted and it's kind of more of a wash. Now I'm gonna go in these areas and I still have too much paint. I want just a little bit of paint on my brush, just barely any. And I'm gonna kind of spin my brush in an oval shape. It's just gonna create some more marks. That's too much. See how that I had so much paint on that one? The idea is we want to kind of create some ovals. All right. So for the next step, I think we will go ahead and do another layer over this where our wave meets here. So I'm going to take my pointed round brush, and what we're going to need to do is load our brush up in 2 colors. So I'm going to want some light purple on it, and I'm going to want some dark purple. So I'm going to make my brush kind of flat here. And I think I'll probably just load it up in the light purple first. And then I'm gonna try to dip just one corner in my dark purple. And now I wanna trace over this line. And if at any point you start to run out of paint, you can load up again with the light purple. And if it starts to get too dark, because it's just kind of mixing in with the dark purple too much, you can clean your brush out again and just kind of start again. And you know what I'm even going to try? I mean, that worked fine, but I'm going to try just filling this in with light purple first. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the dark purple along the edge. And that's just going to give it some dimension. So before we move on, go ahead and take your detail brush and take some black paint. Have a little bit of water in your brush, and you're just going to trace along the bottom edge of that purple water line you just did. And that's going to be its shadow. Having a little bit of water in with your black paint is going to help you make that smooth line that you don't have to keep going over again and again. All right, so now I'm gonna go back to my pointed round brush, and I'm gonna start to fill this in with the purple. We will come in and make it more kind of yellow in the middle. So we're gonna stick to just kind of the edges with the purple and then this part down below. So I've got my light purple. I'm loading up my brush there. And I'm painting over this water. I'll stop when I get to the middle. Should have stopped just a teeny little bit further, but that's okay. And now I'm going to brush over my main little lines that I had coming down. And now we're going to start to add a little bit more detail down here. So in order to really get this to look like water, you almost want kind of like a diamond design. So if I took lines and I brushed them this direction, I would want kind of really wide diamonds. And in the diamonds, there's kind of an ovally shape. And maybe there's some small ovals and maybe bigger ovals. And that is kind of the texture of your water that you're gonna shoot for over here. And I'm using kind of watery purple paint for this. Okay, so I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna start down here on my water line. And I'm going to start by just kind of doing some lines going at the diagonal like we did here. So they're kind of reaching across. And then connecting them into kind of a diagonal pattern. Okay, so now I'm going to start to kind of add in some of those ovals we're talking about, and I'm going to start to use a little bit more paint. So you want it to be, as I'm going over it, maybe it's really skinny and then maybe it gets a little bit wider. So skinny, a little bit wider. You really want it to kind of look a little bit more random. And I think it's about time now. I've got it kind of roughly blocked in there. It's about time to switch to my smaller brush. I'm gonna go to my size 0 here, go to my purple, and that's gonna help me make the smaller ovals, the smaller shapes. So I'm gonna go in here. And draw some ovals. You can hear my kids giggling in the background. That's a little bonus for y'all. Do some kind of wavy lines over here. will do a little bit of pale yellow over this too, so you can be prepared for that. I'm gonna do kind of one more little wavy line coming over here. All right, so the next step is we're gonna fill this in with some darkness. So I'm gonna go back to my pointed round, clean it out. And I'm gonna take some of my dark, I'll start off with just dark purple. We might do some, you know what, actually I'm gonna do dark purple and blue mixed together. So dark bluish purple, my pointed round brush, not the itsy bitsy one, but size 6. And now I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna fill these in and make them a little bit darker. And I'm gonna make them a little bit more bumpy too. If it's already really dark, you won't have to add too much. So I'm wiggling my brush a little bit. And then I'm making it darker, especially here in the middle. And then with these, I'm gonna add a little bit of darkness to the top edges of my diamonds. And remembering to try to keep that kind of wiggly waviness to your brush strokes. Okay, now I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna kind of mix a little bit of red in my paint. So I'm gonna keep my brush with my bluish purple on it, but I'm gonna mix in some red to kind of get a deep dark maroon. And I'm gonna cut out some little circles or little ovals down here into my purple line. So and you want it to be random, and you actually might need to switch to your smaller brush because it might be a little bit easier. So I did some that are bigger. Now I'll switch to my smaller brush here. And I'm going to try to get some little bitty ones here and there. And make sure that you get some clusters of them. Okay. That's looking good. I think we can go in now and add a little bit of a yellow highlight. Actually, we're gonna wait. We're gonna do the yellow highlight after we get our girl in there. Let's get our girl in there first. So if you need to let this dry, there shouldn't be a ton of paint down here, but if you need to let this dry first, you can. And go ahead and we're gonna get our graphite transfer ready. I'm just filling this in a little bit more. So one little detail I forgot to mention is you need some tape. So hopefully you have some tape lying around, and I'll add that in earlier in the video. Okay, so how you can make this a little bit easier for yourself is by getting your detail brush and some white paint or a pencil, and you're just gonna eyeball a teeny tiny little dot that's gonna be in the middle of your sky, so halfway this way and halfway this way, and try to put a little dot there. So I'm gonna eyeball. And that's where I kind of already have a dot there. It's one of my stars is there, so it's gonna be difficult not to lose which star it is. So that's basically where I want her hand reaching for. So I want her legs, and I didn't do feet because feet are in the water and feet are kind of a more challenging thing to paint. I want her legs, her ankles to end just right below where the wave breaks there. And then I want her hand to be basically in the center of the canvas, this direction, not the center this direction, but the center this direction. So halfway in between. And that's gonna put my moon kind of in the middle. So I'm eyeballing to see if her hand lines up with that dot that I made. And I'm actually gonna move her up just a teeny little bit. Let's see. I think that's about right for where I want it. And now the graphite paper, you want the dark side down. So I've got to lift this up now, try to get it roughly in the same spot with the dark side down. And with this down, you can just kind of look and see, does her hand look halfway in the canvas? Now I'm going to take some tape. If you're worried about the tape pulling off some of your paint, just kind of stick it to some fabric or your pants first. And I do try to kind of flatten it out. And so for this, and I don't know what I'm doing today. There. Usually I do the corners, but you know what? It's a wild day. Okay, so you need a pen. You could use a ballpoint, but a pen that's sharper is better. So I've got a sharp pen here, and I'm gonna trace over her, but I'm not gonna trace over the hair. The hair, I'm just gonna freehand, and you can freehand it too for sure. So don't worry about that, and don't feel like you need to press super hard or keep drawing over it. I promise you it will transfer. So I'm going to start up here in the moon, and I'm applying just a medium pressure. And graphite's just pencil, so if you did something you didn't mean to, Just erase it, you can just paint over it. Not a big deal. When I get down here to her hand, this is where you really want to pay attention to the contour, meaning kind of the character of the line around the outside of her body. Okay, so for her head, I'm going to go to the top of her head, and I'm just going to kind of go down and down on both sides, but I'm not tracing over the actual hair. So if you're worried if you got it all, or like me at times, you put your graphite paper facing the wrong direction, you can, before you fully untape it, you can lift it and kind of see and just make sure that you got it all. Looks like I did, so I'm just gonna pull that off now. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is fill in our moon. So I'm gonna use my pointed round brush. So I'm cleaning that out in my water, and this is where the brighter yellow comes in. So I'm gonna take some of my primary yellow, or a cadmium yellow light would work if that's what you have. And I'm gonna mix white in and just get a nice kind of pale yellow there. It will mix a little bit with the graphite, but not much. You really don't need to worry too much about it. I'm gonna start to fill this in. And I'm trying to cover up the line that I made with the graphite, because we don't want our moon to look like it's been outlined, right? And I kind of lean back when I'm painting for you guys, just so that you don't see my head in the way. But sometimes when I'm doing something that I kind of need to be straight, I gotta just bend forward a little bit. And I'm gonna be careful not to paint over her hand too. And we'll probably do 2 layers on this. We actually could have done it in straight white first. That would have been an option, but not completely necessary. So I got it filled in. Now I'm gonna go to my smaller detail brush. And I'm just gonna make sure that I get these little tips on the end filled in. And I'm sorry for all the background noise if it does bother you. I do have 3 children, and we had a crazy snowstorm. And so it is completely frozen solid outside. And the children are in the house. They're getting cabin fever because everything's been canceled all week. So right down here by her hands, I'm going to kind of try to finish out the moon, but not paint over her hands, but also try to not make it look obvious like I'm painting around them. So you want the hand to look like it just pretty much goes over the top of it. Okay, so that'll be our first layer there on the moon. All right, so I'm gonna go in now and see these little white lines. You can now add color over those. So one option would be to clean your brush out and take just the bright yellow, and especially these white ones in the middle. I'm gonna leave it pretty white right in the center of it. At the top by the sun. I'm just gonna paint over these in yellow. And you can see with the watery kind of yellow paint, you can see them really start to pop. They look super, super vibrant. And these ones going to the outer edges, I can either do those in yellow. I think I'm gonna do some yellow on the side of the line that's closest to the middle here. So over here it'll be on the side, and it doesn't matter what I paint in the middle of her. I don't need to try to hit that area, right? Because we're gonna fill her in. And then I'm gonna take some pink. We have some pink out here. And it's gonna blend in with the yellow and make orange. You could also use red. You'll notice with the acrylic fluorescent paints is that they're very, very translucent. It's kind of a bummer sometimes. That's when I start longing to paint in oil paints instead. And now I'll go in, I'll add a little bit of red. Especially to the tails out here. Maybe I'll do a few that are just red. My red's been sitting here a little while, so I've got to kind of loosen it up again. And then let's see. I think for the next step, we're gonna kind of darken it up down here, actually. I'm gonna take my 1/2 inch flat, and I'm gonna need some more of that red. I told you we were gonna use quite a bit of paint here. So I'm gonna first kind of load my brush up in red mixed with a little bit of blue. So kind of a dark maroony color. And I'm gonna start to just kind of fill this in down here, making it a little bit darker, but I'm gonna leave a little of the background showing through too. And I'm going to use the edge of my brush right here where the reflection hits. And now with my brush all loaded up with that maroon color, I'm going to dip one corner in, you could do any, you could do blue, you could do purple, you could do black. I'm going to dip in, let's try purple. So I've got just one corner in purple there, and I'm going to line that corner up with the edge of my little wave break here. Just to kind of darken that up even more. And if you ran out of paint towards the bottom, you can grab a little more and start no more here in the middle. Yeah, that looks better because this is technically like wet sand down here. So I'll take some purple mixed in with the red now just to get darker color. And maybe I'm gonna add some brush strokes over here using the edge of my brush just to kind of mix it up down here a little bit so it doesn't look so solid one color. And now I'll clean my brush out. And I think I'll switch back to my detail brush. And I'm gonna take some red. Actually, just kidding. I'm gonna take that bright yellow first, and I'm gonna paint over this down here. Make it bright just like at the top. And then I'm gonna take some red and yellow mixed together. Get kind of a nice bright orange. And I'm gonna add some more kind of wavy lines, especially around this bright yellow. And we'll go through and do one last kind of round of highlights eventually too. I'm gonna take this chance now to, let's go ahead and add our next layer on the moon. So you can either use your pointed round brush or your detail brush. And sorry I'm bouncing around so much. This painting is kind of like a give and take of a lot of different areas, and you want things to be dry. And so I've got my white and my primary yellow again. And I really want to paint over it so that I do not see any of the background of the canvas showing through. And I'll even do some straight white, big kind of globs of brush strokes just to add some brightness to it. And then I'll do the same thing I did before where I switch to my detail brush. And I'm gonna get a little bit more white than yellow here. And I'm gonna go around the edge and just really make sure that I get all of that graphite covered up. right, so I got that pretty filled in, I think. And now while I have this on my brush, I'm gonna take some of this bright yellow mixture and I'm gonna add some highlight to my water here. So for this, I do want, first we'll go here in the middle, and then we're gonna make our paint a little bit more watery. So I'm gonna do kind of the same where we did kind of lines, angling up and down. And now I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to clean it out so that there's just not too much paint on there. And I'm going to keep it pretty watery. I'm going to get some of my darker yellow, and I'm going to mix just a little bit of the white in there. Not much. Let's see how that looks. To add, yeah, that looks good. So now I'm just kind of going with this watery yellow and I'm just kind of tracing over the middle of my purple. Another thing you could do is kind of aim for the top of the purple. I'm just going right along that edge there. And I want it to kind of fade out as it gets to the edges of the canvas over here. It's kind of less on the side, so it should be brighter here in the middle. That looks about right. And now I'm gonna mix let's do some hot pink and some yellow together to make a really bright orange. And we'll add just a teeny bit of red to that. A little red goes a long way, look out. And I'm gonna add some orange to the sides of this. Just kind of right in here in the middle area. And I can go back down here over my bright yellow again. I'm going to go over most of the yellow, just kind of adding this over the top. Okay. Now let's go ahead and fill our girl in. So for the hands, you're definitely going to want to use your detail brush. And I'm going to use, you can use either the red or the magenta. mixed with blue if you want just a kind of dark maroon. If you want it more of a black silhouette, then you can use straight black. You can try out the maroon first, see what you think of it, and then go from there. So I'm going to go in here. I've got my detail brush. I added a little bit of water to my paint. I'm being careful to follow the contours. I can spin my brush in a circle against my paint just to redefine it. I'm going to try not to get her fingers too big. Can always make them wider, but it's going to be harder to make them smaller. And it's going to overlap over the moon. And if you can really see through your paint, then you might want to add more paint itself or add some of that black in. Even if you're doing the maroon, because you don't really want her to look transparent. Which mine is looking just a little transparent, so I'm just going to mix a little black in there to make it a little more opaque. And remember, adding water to your paint will help you paint more smoothly with this teeny little brush. So I'm doing just her arms first and her hands. And then I'll come down here and do her legs. And then I'll switch brushes to my small pointed round. Not my size 0, but my size 6. And then start really kind of filling her in. I'm getting crazy with my paint. I don't know why I'm doing that. Okay. Okay, so I've got her filled in. While this dries a little bit, I'm gonna work on her hair. So I'm gonna go back to the small detail brush, spin my brush in a circle, And her hair can be as long or as short as you want it to be. It can be kind of however you want it to be. I'm gonna have it kind of wave up, down, and then back up. So I'm gonna start on the top of her head. And sometimes if you try really hard to be careful, it's harder to be careful, and so you want to just kind of go for it. I've got a little too much water up here, so it's a little wild, but I'm not too worried about it. And you can have some hairs that kind of cross. Just getting some straight black on there, and I'm gonna come in and do a couple pieces that kind of come around here on the face. So we're gonna add some highlights into all of this once that dries a little bit. Okay, so while we're waiting for that to dry, at this point, if you want to, you can add some clouds in your sky, or you could leave it. We could also do some more kind of defined stars. Oops. So I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna choose some stars that I want to be really big. So I'm gonna use my detail brush, and I can either make a new one or I can use one that I already have. So I think I'll do one kind of right here. So I'm gonna do a line going vertically and a line going horizontally and diagonally. And after that, I'm gonna put a little dot in the middle. And I'll choose another one. Getting a little bit more water on my brush here. And then I'm just dabbing white in there again. The glob of white right in the center is what's going to make it really, really pop. Okay, so now I'm going to come in and I'm going to start to add the glow on her body. So you could leave her just a straight silhouette. If you want to add a little glow though, you can do that as well. So I'm going to take my detail brush and I'm going to take my bright yellow and a teeny bit of white. And let's see what that looks like first. So I'm going to go right along the outside of her face here. Going to go along the outside of her arm. And then down here, I'm going to get more orange, I think. So I'm going to add a little bit of red to it. And this will also give you an opportunity to kind of reshape it. So we've got a little glow there. Now I'm still using orange and I'm going to come down here and if you're trying to make something thinner, you can just paint right over the black. If you want to make it thicker, just the glow, you can go right over the edge. Do the same thing. This is going to help it stand out over here where it's really dark. And maybe I'll even do a few little streaks of red in her hair at the front here. And if there's anything you want to touch up that you see now, it's a good time to do that. So with her hand, I just want to go over her hand up here one more time. Make sure I can't see the moon through her hands. Okay, that's what you don't want to happen. We gave her a large pinky. Oopsie. So I can show you how to fix that if that happens to you. Now I could add a little bit of detail to her dress. You could either use your pointed round or your detail brush, whichever one you're more comfortable with. I'm going to go in with my pointed round. And I'll start with just plain, actually I'm going to do red with a little bit of the magenta in it. And I'm going to just kind of divide her dress in half here. And I'm going to do some vertical lines kind of going down and up, signifying the kind of folds in her dress. And then I can go in and add some purple in there too. So I'm going to do purple, especially I think down here at the bottom, and go up. Maybe I'll go back to red and just do a little bit of kind of folds in her shirt by doing lines that kind of curve from the top down towards the left side of her body. And up close, at some point you may be going, what in the world is this? You really have to look at it from far away to kind of get the illusion of it. I do wish her hair stood out a little bit more. I wish it was a little bit lighter in here so we could see her hair more. So if I wanted to do that, I could come in and I could lighten this background behind her hair. And then I could go over her hair again. Over the top of the red. Oop, that's what I was talking about, where you have a little bit of water kind of stuck inside your brush there. And see, now I can see her hair showing up a little bit more against that red. Now to fix her wild pinky that I did, hopefully it's had enough time to dry there. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in with white paint, just a teeny little bit on my detail brush, just barely any. And I'm gonna paint over the black that I did that I don't want. And then I'll go in and paint over it with the orange and yellow that's in the background. See, all gone. Can't even see it there. I get to be kind of a perfectionist with hands. It's like I want to keep going over it again and again till I get it just how I want it. Okay, so we've got some kind of highlights in her clothing. Now we're getting to the end here. And what we're gonna do is we're going to kind of make a really bright splash of wave right here by her feet. So this could be done in white, could be done in yellow, could be done in purple. It's kind of up to you. I think I'm gonna go ahead and just go for white. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go for white. So I'm gonna take my brush, clean it out, my detail brush, and I'm gonna get white paint, and I'm gonna kind of glob it along the top edge of this. And I'll start off with just this side. And now you want a brush to flick it with. So you could use one of your mop brushes and flick it like this. So I want to flick to the left first. And then I'll add paint. You could also use a bristle brush. If you didn't have a mop brush, you could use a bristle brush. So I'm gonna keep needing to go in though and add fresh paint. So I did it all to the left, and now I'm gonna go in through here again. And now I'm gonna flick it to the right. So I'm gonna wipe my mop on the side and then same thing, lots of kind of globby paint. I'll show you what happens when you do it with the bristle brush. Get it kind of fluffy. I'm wiping on the side so it doesn't get too messy. And I'll just go ahead and do one direction all the way down, and then I'll switch and do the other direction. So now I'll come in. Alright, so I've got the water kind of crashing up right there. And now you can drop those brushes off in your water if you're finished with them so they don't dry out. Now I'm going to go ahead and go in with some of this bright yellow in my detail brush. And I'm going to get some yellow at the bottom of this. Any yellow will do. This yellow is a little bit dried out, so I'm kind of getting some of this one. Adding some yellow in there. I'll even add some kind of yellow to the splashes, just kind of brushing up. And now I'm gonna add some orange with my hot pink. And I'll add that underneath the yellow. And I can add some kind of little waves of orange right under her feet here. And then I think we need like a little bit more splatter down there, honestly. So I'm gonna go back to my pointed round, clean it out, go straight from my water to some white paint. I want to make sure I'm getting really small marks. Okay, that's about right. They're all landing where I don't want them to, of course. Yeah, that's looking better, more interesting, more splattery. I'm gonna take just this little bit off of her dress because it's a bit much. We can do a little bit over her. So she looks a little galaxy-ish. Yeah. All right, so we're almost to the end. The last thing is just to add kind of a glow on the moon if you want to. You could leave it just how it is. You could add, I'll show you how you can add some red at the back of some of your stars if you wanted to. I could take my detail brush and just go right here, the back of the star, paint over that white and red. Also add some yellow in there. And then go back and add that dab of white in the middle. You can tell I'm tired because I'm starting to get sloppy. That's how I paint. When I start getting too tired, I get a little sloppy. All right, so I'm gonna use my mop brush now. I'm getting it really dry, really fluffy. And I'm just gonna add a little bit of hot pink. I'm gonna use my filbert brush. I'm gonna take some bright hot pink. I'm gonna add a little bit of hot pink down here over the water, or sorry, over the sand. I'm gonna add a little bit more, a few strokes in here. It's just gonna make it a little bit more vibrant, as if it's not vibrant enough already. And I'm gonna go around my moon. And I've got my mop brush in my other hand ready to go. My baby's starting to lose it. Just adding a little hot pink glow to this. And then I'm going to take my filbert brush and I'm going to dip just 1/2 of my brush while it's damp in, let's go with some yellow and a teeny tiny bit of white in it. And I'm going to trace along the moon. Right along the edge there. To give my moon a little bit of a glow. I got too much on my brush. I've got to get it ready again. Keeping it damp. Pale yellow just on one side. And your mop brush can be used to just, if you want to soften up the pink or soften anything up. So that's giving my moon just a little bit of a glow. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is just kind of some little finishing touches on the painting. So I feel like it got a little bit muddy down here, so I'm just gonna brighten it up. I'm gonna take my 1/2 inch flat brush and load it up. And just like we did up here, I'm gonna come in underneath and I'm gonna do the same thing. So kind of that zigzag. Just to kind of brighten it up. And I'll just add a little bit on the side where I'm gonna probably paint some red over the top of it. So while that's drying, I'll just get a little bit more in this one section here. Okay, so while that's drying, I'm gonna come in with my detail brush and some white and yellow mixed together, and I'm gonna make this shoreline here pop a little bit more. So I've got this pale yellow mixture, and I'm not going right against the bottom where the black is. I'm kind of wanting to hit the top of it. That's just gonna brighten that up a little bit more, make that pop a little bit more. And make sure I go all the way around some of these little oval shapes that I have. And while I have this pale yellow, I'm gonna make sure that over here, that these lines still come down. If you kind of lost them a little bit, they got painted over with some of the dark, you can kind of lighten them up again. And I can add a little highlight right here to where it kind of splashes behind her legs. I can even kind of flick my brush up and out. And now I'm going to take bright, vibrant yellow, and I'm going to kind of paint around these white lines that we made. So it's just kind of like I'm outlining them with this bright yellow. And now I'm going to mix together yellow and red and make a nice orange. I want it to be mainly red though, I think. More red than yellow. And now I'm going to outline those. So I'm going right around the yellow here. I don't want too much water on my brush. Kind of bringing that same vibrancy that's up here and down here and bringing it right here in the middle as well. And then I'm going to switch brushes to my pointed round brush, and I'm going to mix together some red and some blue. Get that kind of dark, dark maroon where you've been using. And I'm going to use this to kind of just bring the brightness in with the darkness. So I'm going to do some smaller marks. So maybe the darkness just kind of cuts in a little bit right there. And I want my marks to look very natural. And that's my baby on the baby monitor. She just woke up. It's hard to catch a break around these parts. Okay. And same thing, how we have these little ovals down here. Maybe I want to cut out some little oval shapes. So it's almost like we're just making it a little bit more graphic. And I feel like I do want just a few more smaller ovals down here. So wherever I can see, I can kind of add in a little oval or a little spot, I will. It's just gonna make the water look like it's kind of bubbling where it crashes there. That's looking better. It was just looking a little crazy there. I took a little break and came back to it and went, what? What's going on here? Okay. Anywhere else I can add a little oval, maybe some just kind of right in between some of these little X shapes that we have. Okay, I think that's looking good. You know what? I'll add a little bit of darkness right down here underneath her, underneath our little highlight we did. I'm gonna clean out my pointed round brush, and I'm gonna get some bright red. And I'm just gonna make sure that I really have, ooh, too much water in my brush. Too much. I wanna make sure I really have some nice vibrant red in here. So I'm kind of globbing on the paint now to really make it stand out. Go over this white line here. And that is looking more how I want it to look, just kind of more vibrant all around. And now over the white, I can either leave the white like that, or I can put just the teeniest bit of bright yellow over some of them just to kind of match what we have there just a little bit. Just get a little bright yellow in here. And now I've got my brilliant purple. And I'm just gonna go to any little spots under this bright yellow and just brighten that up a little bit. When you're painting, it's a lot of like push and pull, you know, you bring it forward, you take it back, you bring it forward, you take it back. So I took it back a ways and now I'm kind of bringing it back again. And that's it. So when you're all finished, you can paint your edges if you'd like. You can sign your painting if you like. I want to thank you so much for painting with me today. I enjoyed it very much. I have another version of this painting that I want to do where it's going to be like kind of all light colors, light purple, more earlier in the day. Thank you so much. You can leave any questions or comments that you have below, and we'll see you next time.